On this day, 1987, my favorite James Bond film starring my favorite James Bond, The Living Daylights with Timothy Dalton in the tuxedo, opens in theaters.
He lives for danger. Lives for the moment. He lives on the edge.
Whoever she was, I must have scared the living daylights out of her.
James Bond, 007.
And we're back, like we never left, for the second episode of today. A happy hump day evening to one and all. This is the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Wednesday evening with me here in New York. And once again, we are going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode, which I teased this morning in an episode on my favorite vampire film, The Lost Boys, released 37 years ago today, July 31, 1987. Also released 37 years ago today. My favorite James Bond film starring my favorite James Bond, released on the exact same day, The Living Daylights, starring the fantastic, presumably soon-to-be Sir Timothy Dalton. Now, The Living Daylights was kind of a transitional James Bond film, as was Daniel Craig in 2006 with Casino Royale. And it's not coincidence that I named those two guys, because Daniel Craig's interpretation of Bond is the closest to Timothy Dalton's interpretation of Bond. When Ian Fleming, I almost forgot the name of the author. I was going to say Jason Fleming. That was his son, who actually played him in a TV movie about 30 years ago. But the way that Ian Fleming describes James Bond in the books, if you look at all of the cinematic incarnations, I'm going to discount David Niven. Well, if you want to throw David Niven in everything, fine. The original Casino Royale was a farce. But the official canon cinematic incarnations of James Bond: Sean Connery, George Lazenby, Sean Connery, Roger Moore, Timothy Dalton, Pierce Brosnan, Daniel Craig, and who knows. Out of all those guys I just named, and the only one you probably don't know is Lazenby. He was in the one movie on Her Majesty's Secret Service, when Connery kind of dithered, and then he came back to the role anyway. The actor who most resembles the way that James Bond is described is Timothy Dalton. It's almost as if he originally was up for it, and they wanted to cast him when he was in his early 20s, the Broccoli family it is, because this guy is exactly how the character is described. He was a little too young, so they waited another 15 years. And the irony is, they were going to go to Pierce Brosnan in the early 80s, and he was too young. He stayed on the TV show Remington Steele, which was kind of his big break as far as steps to superstardom that Pierce took. Now, I always liked Pierce as an actor, but I don't think he was that great as James Bond. I think he was let down by the scripts. But my experiences with James Bond films before seeing The Living Daylights. So the only Connery movie that I had seen is Never Say Never Again. That's the sort of renegade James Bond film, which is technically not supposed to be canon, but I mean, of course it is. It's Connery playing Bond, for crying out loud. And by that, I mean that the official franchise, Roger Moore was the star. And Roger Moore made a movie called Octopussy, Octopussy. It would have been better if it had been Connery saying that word, Octopussy, pussy galore, I must be dreaming. Octopussy, official canon, James Bond, and Never Say Never Again came out at the same time. Now, if Roger Moore was any other kind of a personality, he might have been pissed off because Connery gave up the role more than a decade prior. Now, what the fuck does he mean he's going to do a Bond film? What the hell happened? What is going on here? Moore was such a great guy. He was such a jolly old chap. He just shrugged his shoulders. Didn't affect his friendship with Connery. He didn't say anything negative. He said, God bless. I hope they make a great movie, whatever it was that he said. Never Say Never Again was the first James Bond film that I saw. My dad rented it. It's actually one of the first movies he rented when we got a VCR player. It's kind of crazy to think, but this is more than 4 decades ago. I saw For Your Eyes Only. I saw For Your Eyes Only right around the same time as Never Say Never Again. I'm pretty sure those are the only Bond films that I had seen when I watched The Living Daylights on HBO. So I was 14. I would have been 14. And I don't think I saw any of the early Connery films. If you think of it, again, I say stuff like this all the time to the youngins out there, but it bears repeating. The only way, especially before the Stone Age Paleozoic era technology of a VHS or Betamax, the only way to watch a movie, it had to be on TV or you saw it in a theater. That's it. 2, it had to literally be on, 11 o'clock, this movie starts. That's it. So it's not like I had the pick of, you just decided not to watch any Bond films. I watched what was on. Man with a Golden Gun was never on. The other Roger Moore films, Moonraker was never aired at that point. No. So I had familiarity with Connery. I knew that he had played James Bond, but the movie Goldfinger, I would have liked to have seen it. It was never on TV. At least it was never on TV when I had access to it when I was 9 years old. It's completely different. You're a little kid in the 80s. You have technology that isn't really technology. It's horseshit compared to today. It's not even in the same universe. You watch what's in front of you. And I was happy to have seen Never Say Never Again. I watched it over and over and over every time it was on HBO. It was so cool. I loved Klaus Maria Brandauer. I didn't know his name. Who plays, was it Largo, the kind of villain, or one of the villains. Connery is great. And Kim Basinger is also great in that movie. And from that, she kind of moved right into The Natural opposite Robert Redford. And talk about somebody making an impression in 2 big movies opposite huge stars. Connery, then Redford. It's pretty damn impressive. So I had seen For Your Eyes Only with Roger Moore. It was just okay. Even back then, I didn't think Moore took the character seriously enough. I liked the way that Connery had the kind of humor, but also the intensity and the kind of physicality to get shit done when he had to. Moore just was still cracking wise with the fate of the world at stake. I don't know, it just didn't really work for me. The movies were entertaining that I saw. I saw Octopussy right around the same time, I think, as Never Say Never Again. So when I sat down, I knew Roger Moore was Bond, and I had never heard of Timothy Dalton. And then somebody said, he's in Flash Gordon. Oh, Flash Gordon I had seen at least 10 times. Good movie. I should do an episode on that. That's maybe the ultimate guilty pleasure movie. But I liked what Timothy Dalton did in Flash Gordon. I feel like his character is the most interesting character in the story because he seems like an antagonist, but he's not really an antagonist, Prince Barin. And I thought it was interesting they spelled it B-A-R-I-N. My grandpa Baron, B-A-R-O-N. But I don't know. I was somebody, even as a kid, I wasn't really into change. And I had the identification of either Sean Connery or Roger Moore. Tracy, I'll buy you an ice cream. Roger Moore. That was my identification. That's who was James Bond. It was one of those 2 guys. And then, who's Timothy Dalton? Oh, he was in Flash Gordon. But why would they want him to play James Bond? So it's not like I was geared up for it. When Daniel Craig did Casino Royale, and I had been a fan of Daniel Craig before he was cast, and I was, not that it matters what I was thinking, but I was telling everyone who wanted to talk about it, whether it was, online or texting or at the gym, this guy is going to be great as Bond. Yeah, but he's got blonde hair. Who the fucking cares what color hair he has? I mean, what are we being serious now? Is this for real? He's got blonde hair, so they'll darken it. If it's that important to you that he has to have a certain color of hair. What? I mean, I guess Connery didn't have a choice but to wear the toupee, right? Yeah. I knew Craig was going to be a home run. And I was looking forward to Casino Royale, and it was actually better than advertised because the angle with poker, which talk about right in the wheelhouse. That was fucking awesome. Could never happen that way. The Last Hand is so preposterous. It makes The Last Hand in the movie Rounders seem, oh, that happens all the time. Because that actually does happen all the time. But to have every player in a billionaire type game, every player has a made hand for the final showdown, I think you have a better chance of winning the lottery, getting struck by lightning, and meeting the person of your dreams in the same day. That's how preposterous that poker hand is in Casino Royale. But the idea is, I was geared up for Daniel Craig in Casino Royale. When I when I first saw The Living Daylights on HBO, I was not expecting to like it because, this is going to suck. I don't think this actor is going to, why didn't Roger Moore make another movie? Why didn't they bring Connery back? So I was that kind of kid, always complaining. But there is something in Timothy Dalton in the early scenes. It's as if he's sensing there could be resistance among the audience. And George Lazenby, on Her Majesty's Secret Service, he has a similar moment, although it's more obviously, it's really an incredible fourth wall break. For those who aren't familiar, on Her Majesty's Secret Service, Connery had made either 3 or 4 Bond films. And George Lazenby looked the part. He looked the part. Wasn't really much of an actor. He looked the part. And there's a scene right at the beginning of the film where he basically flirts with a woman on a beach, propositions her, and she kind of buzzes him off. And Lazenby almost literally looks at the audience and goes, that never happened to the other fella. And then we go into James Bond theme. John Barry, incredible. Timothy Dalton doesn't do that. He has maybe a fourth wall break. He's in a scene with a character called Saunders, a guy that he's working with on this one particular. As we open the film, somebody's trying to defect. There appears to be a sniper. The KGB is sending a sniper, and Bond immediately smells a rat. There's no way this girl is a sniper. She doesn't know one end of a rifle from the other. But the opening before that is a training exercise gone awry. A little bit like Mission Impossible 9 years later, where it turns out they think that they have this kind of training exercise, and they need to get this guy, they need to get this disc. It's all horseshit. It's all BS. In the world of The Living Daylights, the opening sequence, the Rock of Gibraltar is where it's set. It's supposed to be just a training exercise, and people end up getting killed, and Bond makes a crazy escape on a parachute and ends up on a yacht. He just happens to, think about how vast the Pacific Ocean is, or the Mediterranean Sea. I don't know where the hell he's supposed to be. But he just magically lands on a yacht, an amazing multimillionaire type yacht with a gorgeous woman who's probably around 30. And but she has a nice phone. She's got 1986 era, cellular phone, I guess. And we're led to believe that he hooks up with her after about 12 seconds worth of conversation, establishing that, okay, this is the same James Bond, lady killer, takes things very seriously. The guy he probably should have been killed just now, but he can still get it done. He's not celibate. He's not chaste. And this actually was a thing for the time, because The Living Daylights was conceived of before the AIDS crisis hit. And Roger Moore was originally going to star, and then when he kind of backed out, they rejiggered the screenplay and tailored it more towards Timothy Dalton's strengths. There were a couple of kind of comedic action sequences, one of which called Magic Carpet Ride, which you can find on YouTube. It's not a Timothy Dalton kind of thing. It would have been perfect for Roger Moore, and I'm being serious when I say that. So Dalton has this moment where he's on a yacht with this woman, and he basically says, I'll report in an hour. She says, won't you join me? He says, better make that 2. Almost smiles at the audience, but not quite. And then you go to the title sequence. Title sequences of Bond films are phenomenal. My old NYU professor, I love the guy, Toby Miller, he wrote a book an academic text on James Bond and spy films in general. I forgot the name of the book. But one time in class, he showed us the beginning and ending, the opening titles and closing credits of every James Bond film that had been made up to that point, except GoldenEye, which was actually coming out, if I'm not mistaken, this was spring '95. It came out in the fall. So however many James Bond films there were from Dr. No until, 30 years of Bond. But Timothy Dalton, early in the film, the scene I referenced where there's supposedly a sniper and he realized it's not a sniper, there's something fucking going on here that's not okay. I'm not just going to kill a woman who's holding a rifle because you tell me she's a sniper. She's not a sniper. Dalton, without breaking the fourth wall, is engaging the audience. He seems to be playing to the audience. And he does it in a very ingratiating way, just as, won't you join me? Yeah, I'll report in an hour. Better make that too. He does it with such style and such charm. It doesn't feel forced. And it does not take us out of the fiction at all the way this never happened to the other fella. Temporarily takes us out of the fiction in On Her Majesty's Secret Service. The plot of The Living Daylights, it is a conventional agent, double agent, possible triple agent, bad Russians, bad Afghanis. There's just a lot of stuff going on, but it is a pretty conventional spy story where Bond has a mission and he is not going to do the mission that he is tasked with because he objects. There's something wrong here. And a terrific actor who appeared in the most recent Indiana Jones film, Dial of Destiny, and Part 3 and Part 1, John Rhys-Davies, a phenomenal actor. He plays Sala in the Indiana Jones films. In this movie, he is a Russian general. And this is to the movie's credit, he seems to be an antagonistic character, but he's not. And then you have the terrific Dutch actor Jeroen Krab, who many of you might remember. He plays Harrison Ford's pal, the fellow Dr. Charles Nichols in The Fugitive. He was a late replacement when, unfortunately, Richard Jordan was too sick to continue. He was about 90% done, and he couldn't finish, and he passed, and they had to recast the role. I think Jeroen Krab did a great job, given the fact that he was literally not even a last-minute replacement. They had to reshoot so many scenes. I mean, the people in the cast were probably not happy about it. What are you going to do? But he's the double agent. He's the guy who we think is trying to defect, but it turns out there's a lot more with that character than we think. And then you have an American played really well by Joe Don Baker, who appeared in other Bond films as a different character. He plays an American arms dealer. And there is so much intrigue and mystery, and there's more plot twists and more kind of reversals and reveals in this film than there are in typical Bond films. You know, like, for example, Casino Royale, there's, I guess you could call it a big reveal or a reversal at the very end or towards the very end of the film. But The Living Daylights, the plot continues unfolding, and really the only character who seems like a heel the whole way through, who really is, this isn't much of a spoiler, is a character Whitaker played, as I said, so well by Joe Don Baker. I don't know exactly what it was, and to this day, why I respond to Dalton's interpretation of Bond more so than any of the other actors. I mean, I love Sean Connery. But the irony is, when Sir Sean passed, he passed, I want to say it was October of 2020. It could have been September. But when he passed, my first thought was not 007. My first thought was Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade. My first thought was Godspeed, Professor Henry Jones Sr., not Godspeed 007 or the best 007. I mean, if I have to rank, I got Dalton first, Connery second, Daniel Craig third, Pierce, Roger Moore, George Lazenby. I mean, I really like Daniel Craig, but after the first one, I don't think the rest of the movies they don't really do it for me. They're not that great. And a lot of people love the last one with him, No Time to Die. And some people love Quantum of Solace. None of them really, they just didn't work for me. I felt the same with the Pierce movies. I saw Tomorrow Never Dies in theaters. Not that good. GoldenEye I also saw in theaters. It's okay. It's not great. And I didn't really consider myself to be that finicky of a James Bond connoisseur. I mean, I love Goldfinger. As I said, I love Never Say Never Again. Those to me are my two favorite of the Connerys. And you can argue that the only really great Bond film that Roger Moore made is The Spy Who Loved Me, which happened to be a fantastic story and incredible visuals. But it's neither here nor there. Some point early in the film, I became a fan of Timothy Dalton. I said, this guy is fucking great. I didn't say it out loud, but he made the role his own. He didn't come across like an imposter putting on the tuxedo or a kid playing dress up as James Bond. Right at the beginning of the movie, the scene at Gibraltar, and then the scene with the character of Saunders, where they're trying to make sense of this can't be a sniper, and the character of Saunders is pissed off, saying, bro, you just disobeyed a fucking order. What are you doing here? He was coming across as if he was born to play this part. As if he was always James Bond. And Daniel Craig did that too, although the way that they did the timing and the sequencing in Casino Royale, where they kind of rebooted the entire franchise as far as we're starting James Bond from scratch. We meet James Bond in The Living Daylights, and then Timothy Dalton did one more film, License to Kill. Bond has a history, even though he's considerably younger than Sean Connery in the 1983, Never Say Never Again, and Roger Moore in 1985's A View to a Kill. He's a lot younger. But in License to Kill, he references something that happened in the George Lazenby Bond film. Spoiler alert. Bond had been married. And spoiler alert. Bond had been married. So the Timothy Dalton Bond, it's like it's all canon, even with different actors of different ages. Dalton's Bond was married. Because George Lazenby's Bond was married. And that would mean that Roger Moore, his Bond, was also married. And when Connery came back for Never Say Never, well, no, not that one. That's not canon. See, I keep getting myself not mixed up. It's not official. It's a Bond film, though. He plays 007. So the idea with this film, though, the plot, it's just really intricate and well thought out. The stunt work is incredible. There is a stunt off the edge of a plane, which is clearly thousands of feet in the air. I have no idea how they pulled it off. And the way that they cut, I forgot the name of the actor who plays Necros. He's terrific. He's one of the bad guys. The way that they cut the actor with Timothy Dalton, obviously the two principals are not hanging off of a plane. It's not Tom Cruise, a death-defying stunt in Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. But the way that they shoot the stunts, they're incredible. There are explosions that take place during the Afghanistan sequence. I don't know how they did that either. I mean, I know how they did it, but I don't know how they did it while preventing people from getting hurt. There's no green screen. There's no CGI. The stunt work, the explosions, and shit blowing up real good, and the death-defying airplane sequence, it's top-notch stuff. How the fuck do you do that? I have no idea. But one thing this movie did that is different than most, and not on Her Majesty's Secret Service, where Bond marries the character played by Diana Rigg. I think her name is Tracy in the film. Probably because of the time that it was the AIDS era and a lot of people were scared, kids, adults, people were freaked out, no doubt about it. It was decided, and I don't know if this was in the original script. As I said, they made adjustments when they knew Dalton was coming in, a younger Bond. He's more serious, whatever. But Bond only gets involved with one woman, the cellist, who he was told is an assassin, that he knows she's not an assassin. Somebody wants her bumped off. Something's rotten in the state of Denmark, almost literally. So terrific actress, Mariam Dabo, plays Cara Malovi, a famous, renowned cellist. And she has a violin, a Stradivarius, a super expensive violin. She got the violin from the American arms dealer, Brad Whitaker. Like, there's all kinds of crazy shit going on in this plot, but it's all logical. It all makes sense that why this character is tied to this character. So if you want to count the woman that was on the yacht, then Bond has sex with two women in this film. but maybe they don't actually, we don't really know. He maybe only has sex with one woman. So there is a romantic element. Kara is not simply the leading lady. Yeah, Bond's trying to get her clothes off, for sure. But there is a greater sense of need and respect that forms between the two of them. And there is an action sequence that is, I think, one of the 10 best action sequences I've ever seen. Again, there are certain stunts, you have an idea of how they do it, but when you see it actually on screen, it is thrilling. So there is an extended chase in this film, and it's my favorite individual sequence in any James Bond film, with the possible exception of the last poker hand in Casino Royale. It's 1 and 1A. That's not really an action scene. Bond and Kara are trying to escape from Russia. And he has the Aston Martin, and the car is juiced to the gills. And during this extended chase, he shows off everything that the car has. It's got a rocket motor. It has something that can like change a tire on the fly. It's fucking great. They end up very close to the border, but the car goes into a ditch and a lot of snow, and there are Russian agents, spies, police, I don't know, military, I don't know who it is. They're about to get arrested, basically, and brought back to Russia. What they also happen to have, they have her cello, which she insisted she go back for, despite the fact they really didn't have time for it. They escape like almost on a ski slope inside the cello case. And it is a spectacular scene. It's the sort of stunt that could backfire. The seams could show through. But man, it is an incredible movie moment. They make it across the border. Sorry for the spoiler. They make it across the border on a cello case. We have nothing to declare, just a cello. The Living Daylights was a significant hit. And history likes to imply certain things about either certain actors or certain movies. And history seems to imply that Timothy Dalton's tenure as Bond was marked by box office disappointments. The Living Daylights grossed almost 5 times its production cost. It was a significant box office hit. It did just under $200 million worldwide. By any metric, that is a stupendous gross for 37 years ago. For reference, The Lost Boys, which was considered a hit, grossed $35 million, released the same day. So there was a narrative that, well, audiences didn't connect to Dalton. That's a crock of shit. 1987 was a great summer for movies, and as was 89 when License to Kill came out, and didn't do as well as expected, but that was the summer of Batman, Michael Keaton, Jack Nicholson. That was the summer of Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade. That was the summer of Star Trek V, Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, Lethal Weapon 2. There were a lot of big hitters. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Ghostbusters 2, Parenthood, UHF with Al Yankovic. Summer 89 was insane. How many big movies, even Karate Kid 3, which wasn't very good. But The Living Daylights, and I'm not going to spoil anymore, you have to see it. I think it's the most accessible of the pre-Daniel Craig Bond films, and you will not believe the stunt work and the practical effects and how they're able to do things which look very dangerous. You see the actor standing right there. And Timothy Dalton did do a lot of his own stunts. He did a lot of his own stunts in License to Kill. He did an underwater stunt, which the studio said, you're not doing it. He said, yes, I am. Try and stop me. But it is a great film. And I guess I haven't seen all of the James Bond films, but if I had to rank a sort of top 3, it's ridiculous. I'm going to have Never Say Never Again 3rd, Casino Royale 2nd, Living Daylights 1st. Actually, I'll have License to Kill and Never Say Never Again tied. I don't like License to Kill as much as The Living Daylights, as much as Timothy is fantastic. And Robert Davi as the villain, awesome. He played a lot of heavies in that era, except in Die Hard, where he's Special Agent Johnson. This is Agent Johnson, no relation. Funny shit. But The Living Daylights, my favorite Bond film, starring Timothy Dalton, my favorite cinematic incarnation of 007. released on this day, July 31st, 1987. This has been episode 261 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Wednesday evening here with me in New York. If you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Spotify or iTunes, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Until then, shaken, not stirred. Peace.